This is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is the Blade Breaker's Daughters in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 86, An Emperor's Ascension. The journey to Inver was a rather quiet one. Two carriages travelled alongside one another through the countryside, with Byleth and Edelgard in one, and Hubert in the other. When asked why he was in a different carriage, Edelgard simply responded that he was going to visit his father while they went to the Imperial Palace. Idly wondering what he was going to do, Byleth spent most of the trip gazing out the window. With everything that had happened during the year, she hadn't been able to enjoy traveling despite practically going all over Fodlan. The far from quiet marches of her mercenary life seemed like something from so long ago at this point. The Empire, I don't think we've traveled much there since I've awoken, Suthis said, gazing out the window with Byleth. It feels ancient. Moving her gaze away from the view outside, Byleth turned to look at Edelgard. If I may ask, what's your crowning going to be like? Well, officially we will not be proclaiming my ascension as emperor until next month, Edelgard answered. The actual ceremony usually involves a large celebration that happens all over Adristria, though that will likely be delayed. As is, all that will happen is my father will pass the crown to me, with a representative of the church being there to witness it. Like how Siros was the one who crowned the first emperor? Byleth asked, getting Edelgard to nod, albeit with a frown. Are you sure it'll count with me? It is a bit of a loophole, I will admit, as you work at the academy, not so much the church, but since you were directly hired by Rhea and also wield a sacred relic, then I see no issue. Besides, I've never been one for traditions, Edelgard said with a smile. You know, this will be my first time back in Inver since my first visit. I'm not surprised. I doubt your father will have been in a hurry to head back. I suppose if there's time, I can show you around. That sounds nice. The only place I actually visited was the Opera House. And the inn we stayed at, I suppose, Byleth responded, though I'm sure you've been to the Opera House plenty of times. That I have. My first time there was actually with my uncle, back before he'd been replaced. Edelgard sighed wistfully. My memory of that performance isn't the clearest, but I do remember enjoying myself. The next time I went though. When I learned that the impostor died, I spent several days in disbelief, thinking that it must have been a lie, and he'd show up one day to drag me back to the dungeons. And when nothing came about, I decided to go out and enjoy the opera. That caused many rumors to go flying back then, about the disease-riddled child who couldn't even properly mourn her family's death, Edelgard said, chuckling bitterly. Did you enjoy the show? Byleth asked, unsure of what else to say. Quite, it was a marvelous production. Though I must say, it was quite a surprise to learn several years down the line the star of the production would be my housemate. Something I'm sure you enjoyed, Byleth remarked, getting Edelgard to blush. My teacher, may I ask you something? Edelgard inquired, getting her to nod. Say you were presented with two items, a beautiful ring, said to soothe your worries, and a blood-soaked axe, said to have fought constant battles, and you were only allowed to take one, which would it be? Why can I only take one? It's what is expected of you, Edelgard responded, getting Byleth to frown. Then I'll take both. Edelgard blinked. Professor, that's not meant to be an option. Sure, but I'm a mercenary. It's only smart to be greedy when presented with potential treasures, Byleth explained. The axe sounds reliable, and the ring sounds lovely, so it's smart to take both. Why are neither of you making this easy? Edelgard muttered to herself. Nothing. We're almost to the Imperial Palace, so make sure to be ready, Edelgard deflected, trying to keep a blush off her face. Thankfully for her, Byleth didn't press the topic as they arrived at the castle to find a certain someone already waiting for them. Lady Edelgard. Monica. Surprise evident on her face, Edelgard did a double take as she spotted the redhead approaching them. What are you doing here? Is it really such a surprise I'm here? I mean, I can't really visit you that often when you're at the academy, so why wouldn't I come to Inver when you mentioned you would be heading back to the Empire? Monica von Oaks answered as if it was the most obvious thing, before smiling at Byleth, and hello again, Professor. You're looking well. Hello Monica, it's nice to see you again, Byleth greeted with a small wave. Still not going to join the academy again? Thank you for the offer, but no. Ah. Did I miss something? Edelgard asked as she glanced between the two. I asked Monica if she wanted to rejoin the academy when she visited, but she said she was too busy helping you out. That I am, but we can catch up later. We should move quickly, Your Highness. I ensured that Duke Aegir would be distracted, so we need to head to the throne room quickly. Thank you, Monica, Edelgard said, nodding to her before leading the three of them through the palace. She could hear all the servants they passed begin whispering in surprise at the sight of the princess, returned far earlier than expected. Sticking behind the pair, Monica hung back to let the two walk up the stairs of the throne room together. Awaiting them was a sickly old man, who looked a hair's breadth away from death. Yet even so, his eyes filled with life upon seeing Edelgard, both warmth and regret dancing in them. Father, forgive me for making you do this. I understand how much pain you are in. There is nothing to apologize for, Edelgard. I am content knowing you are free of that man. Emperor Ionius IX said with a soft smile on his face, that I would still be around to see you crowned emperor is more than I can ask for. Thank you, Father, Edelgard said, trying to keep her tone even. Now, with my teacher acting as representative of the church, please relinquish the crown to me. Of course, Edelgard. For the sake of all of the Empire and all of Fodlan, I shall carry this responsibility on my shoulders, Edelgard stated, kneeling before her father. The Emperor slowly rose from his throne, his limbs struggling with the motion, before he seemed to gain a new life as he moved towards Edelgard and removed his crown, before placing it upon her head. By the covenant between the red blood and the white sword, and by the double-headed eagle upon your head, I hereby pronounce you, Edelgard von Hresvelg, the new emperor. Are you prepared to take those responsibilities as your own? I swear upon this throne, in accordance with the ancient covenant, I swear to use my power to lead Fodlan into a new dawn of peace, Edelgard swore, her voice wavering only for a moment before it hardened like steel with her resolve. With that, the emperor arose as Ionius sat down. My daughter. I wish I could have done more for you. That I could have kept you from being taken away to the kingdom, that I could have kept you safe from Aegir. Ionius said, regret seeping into his voice. There is no need to say more, Father. Your presence was my salvation. The care in your eyes comforted me, and the fury you felt fueled my own. The blood from your clenched fist told me I wasn't alone in bleeding, Edelgard replied, sorrow in her own voice. Silence fell upon the two before Ionius looked at Byleth. You are the Ashen Dragon, Byleth Eisner, correct? Stiffening at being addressed, Byleth bowed. Yes, I am Emperor Edelgard's teacher. Thank you, for taking care of my daughter. Ionius thanked, before he began to cough. He raised a hand, keeping Edelgard from going to him before his coughs subsided, and he turned his gaze back towards Byleth. An emperor will need many allies, and I am pleased to know you are hers. I'm glad to be Edelgard's ally, Byleth stated, she has helped me many times, and I believe in her goal. You've helped me far more times, my teacher. Even long before we met. Before Byleth could ask what Edelgard meant, a loud voice sounded in the throne room. Your Majesty, what are you doing out of your bed chambers? Duke Aegir practically demanded to know as he approached, before pausing. Your Highness, what are dash? You misspeak, Aegir. You are to refer to me as Your Majesty, Edelgard stated, her voice cold and authoritative. And in an instant, the Prime Minister went from confused to shocked. What? It is true, she is now Emperor Edelgard, and an ordinance must be prepared to announce that fact, Ionius said. But before that, we must address another issue, Edelgard stated, turning her glare towards the Prime Minister, Ludwig von Aegir, for your crime of overstepping your authority, attempting to seize Alliance land, and potentially causing a war between Adrestia and Leicester, I hereby strip you of your title and place you under arrest. What are you saying? Aegir shouted, attempting to step toward Edelgard only for Byleth to draw her sword and place the tip against his throat. Take one step further and I will take that as a sign of aggression against the Emperor. Why you? Do you know who I am? The former Prime Minister, Edelgard stated, her gaze remaining steadfast. Guards! Take this man away! The Imperial Guard in the throne room approached the group, aiming their spears at Aegir, who could only shake in rage before he was taken away. He opened his mouth to complain, to rage, before he shut it with a frustrated growl, bowing his head and letting the guards pull him along. Heh! I've been wanting to do that for some time, Edelgard remarked, a smile coming to her face as she looked at Byleth. Thank you, my teacher. What exactly did you mean by me helping you before we met? Professor, do you remember what you told me about being in the Okama Mountains 5 years ago? Yes. My teacher, the man who replaced my uncle, died in the Okama Mountains 5 years ago. From a sudden rock slide. Excuse me? Ionius asked, unsure of what he just heard. Oh. Byleth slowly nodded as Edelgard's words sunk in and she pieced together what she meant. Well, that's one down then. PFF-. Edelgard stifled a giggle, covering her mouth for a moment before clearing her throat. My teacher, please do not kill any of the other nobles involved in the insurrection. I have my own plans to handle each of them, and a few are too useful to be removed. I'm still going to keep a tally. I don't have to kill them, we can count it if they're handled in other ways. She tilted her head, thinking. Should I count Duke Aegir already or should we wait for his sentence? I think waiting would be more appropriate, Monica suggested, that way if his sentence is death, you can be the one to swing the axe. Oh, good point. Thank you, Monica. To be clear, I do not intend for you to become an executioner, Edelgard clarified. Still something to keep in mind, Byleth commented, shrugging, will Count Varley have his uses? At the very least I believe it is appropriate for Bernadetta to be here to decide what to do with him. Fair. Byleth glanced at Ionius. Should I help your father back to his room? There is no need, Ionius responded. I'll have my guard do so when they return. Thank you for all you have done. I'm just glad I could be there for her. Well, with that settled, how about we have some tea, Your Majesty? Monica offered, I can have some prepared right away. Thank you Monica, that sounds lovely, Edelgard said, smiling at her. Farewell father, I will see you as soon as I can. Giving her father a bow, Edelgard and Monica left, with Byleth following behind, before she paused and looked back at Ionius. Your daughter is incredibly strong, I'm honored to have met her. Bowing deeply, she walked off. Sitting upon the throne, Ionius could only smile, knowing his daughter was in good hands. The palace of Inber was far grander than Byleth had realized, practically dwarfing Garreg Mach with its size. She needed to make sure if Shay was ever here that someone would always be with her so she didn't get lost. Thankfully Edelgard and Monica knew their way around the palace quite easily, and they soon ended up on a balcony overlooking Inber while Monica brought out a portable tea set. Will Bergamot be okay today, Your Majesty? Of course, thank you Monica. And there is no need to call me Your Majesty, you can still refer to me as Edelgard. Oh no, I would never be so presumptuous, Monica replied as she prepared the tea. Though I must say, I am honored to have been there upon your coronation, I shall make sure to transcribe the events perfectly. Transcribe? Byleth asked. Monica has a perfect memory, and has taken it upon herself to be the historian who writes about me, Edelgard explained. To ensure Emperor Edelgard is properly remembered for her grand deeds, I shall write down everything that occurs with her. It is a shame I wasn't there for her year at the academy. If only my father had allowed me to wait another year. Monica said with a sigh. It does seem like a shame, I'm sure it would have been nice teaching you, Byleth said with a smile, and the offer is still open if you want to join. I think I'll be fine, Professor. Though, perhaps I will be able to learn a thing or two from you when you start working for her. Monica suggested, trying to placate the earnest professor. And succeeding, judging by her smile. I would be happy to. You must really like teaching, Professor, Edelgard said with an amused smile. It feels nice, Byleth admitted, maybe if I ever retire, I might settle down as a teacher somewhere. Though I'm not sure how many places are like the Officers' Academy. There is the Sorcery Academy in the kingdom, but aside from that, most nobles tend to have personal tutors when they are taught, Monica explained. I'm sure you'd make quite a fortune as a personal combat instructor to nobles. Humph, it may not be what you're thinking about, but I would hope as my future advisor you weren't already planning on retiring before you ever started, Edelgard said with a pout, before pausing as she heard Monica gasp. Is everything okay? Byleth asked, concerned. Of course it is. This is the first time I've seen Her Majesty pout. Oh, I shall make sure to keep that image forever ingrained in my mind. Edelgard could feel a headache starting to arrive. She shook it off though in favor of taking a sip of her tea. Very well done, Monica. Oh, you flatter me, Your Majesty. Ah, I'll have to remember this feeling of being praised. It is very good, Byleth commented too, prompting a smile from Monica. I'm glad to hear you enjoy it. I have been practicing my brewing in between the other tasks I've been carrying out for Lady Edelgard. Other tasks? Byleth paused. Ah, is this stuff I'm allowed to know about, or is it confidential information? Considering I intend to make you one of my confidants, I do not see an issue in sharing some of the work I have asked Monica to undertake, Edelgard decided. Monica, if you would. Of course, Your Majesty. You see, while Lady Edelgard has been busy at Garreg Mach, I have been dutifully aiding her in a search for relics and other items of interest that may allow her reign to progress without issue, Monica readily explained, in part because Edelgard had already let her know in advance what to say in such situations. While we don't expect too much resistance, there is the possibility of a rebellion, or even outside threats causing problems as Her Majesty attempts to enact her reforms. Well, I might be able to help if the church has a problem with the way you changed things, Edelgard, Byleth offered, and it took all of Edelgard's self-control to keep herself from breaking out into a massive smile. Fortunately for her, a distraction arrived in the form of Hubert. Good day, Your Majesty. I see your ascension went well. That it did, Hubert, thank you. Such a shame for you to have missed it, perhaps if I have time later I can recount it for you, Monica offered. Ah, but I shall be so busy helping Her Majesty. Unlike certain people. I'm sure Emperor Edelgard's words will suffice. Unless you claim to speak for her. I resent that accusation. So, Hubert, Edelgard cut it before they could continue. How did your visit to your father go? Tragically, it seems that informing him of your intention to become emperor was too much for his frail heart, and my poor, unfortunate father had a heart attack. And fell down the stairs in the process, Hubert explained with a grim smile on his face. Oh my condolences, Hubert. Truly a tragedy, Monica commiserated. Perhaps you would like to retire for the night. No, as the new Marquis Vestra I must be prepared to take on the mantle my father left me with his untimely and entirely accidental death. You don't really believe that, do you? Suthies asked as Byleth sipped her tea. Well, that's 2 down at least. Chapter 87, Interlude, The Weather Vane. Yes, I want that bust over there, where the light will catch it properly, Acheron Lethe Phlegathon, the newly established conqueror of Ordalia, considered as he looked around his new lounge. Ah, fix that painting right now. I will not have any portraits of myself be hanging crooked. His servants hurried to fulfill his commands to remove any trace of House Ordalia from their former castle in favor of images and decorations extolling his own esteemed self. All hints of Ordalia purple and white would soon be dragged away entirely in favor of glorious Acheron yellow. There you are, Lord Acheron. Acheron felt a frown come to his face at the interruption, though it soon turned to an ingratiating smile when he realized who was speaking to him. Ah, Sir Mycen. It's so nice to see you. I wasn't expecting you to come by. If I did, I would have prepared refreshments. He glared towards a pair of servants who didn't look busy enough. You two, prepare some tea for Sir Mycen and his companion immediately. The servants set down the desk they were moving and immediately leapt to obey his orders, as they should. Haha, thank you for hospitality, Lord Acheron, but you need not put yourself out for our sake, Mycen demurred with a smile on his pale face. My associate and I are merely here to ensure you are well supported in this time of transition. Ah, I see. Acheron let his smile fall for a moment when he noticed how the other warlock with Mycen was gazing at his office with a faint frown on his pale face. And is your guest going to introduce himself properly? Oh, there's no need to address odes. He is simply my assistant, Mycen explained, prompting a pause from the other warlock. Yes, hello Lord Akiran, I am here to assist, the man muttered, not even bothering to hide the sneer on his face, which got Akiran to scowl. Now see here, I will not be glared at in my own castle. Pray, forgive him, Lord Akiran, Mycen entreated with a small smirk, he is used to wearing a mask. Akiran didn't really understand what that had to do with anything, but he scoffed, choosing to ignore the second warlock in favor of focusing on the powerful mage sent by his benefactor. Fine, never mind then. I presume you have a reason for coming here again? Does Duke Agir require something? No, His Grace has no issues with how you are running things at the moment. We are simply here to confirm things are running smoothly. I see you are settling well in your new residence. Humph. As well as I can be with this incompetent help, he snapped, glaring over at the servants, before turning back to the mages with a simpering smile. Well, you can tell Duke Agir he has no need for any concern. I have Ordelia fully under my control. It's only a matter of time before those fools give me a seat on the round table, and if not, well, clearly such a sizable gift to the Empire will grant me the title of Count No. I'm sure Duke Agir will ensure you are properly rewarded regardless, Mycen responded, though things would have gone much smoother if you had actually captured the Ordlias. Akiran frowned. Tell that to the men you provided. Strong though they may be, they're practically brain dead. They were too focused on just causing havoc instead of actually listening to my orders. I'll make sure to keep that in mind for when I train the next batch, Mycen said, though at least they're still providing some use. Humph, that is true. Why, I think they would make a fine gift to Agir as well. Even if I don't end up seceding, then it's only proper I establish good relations with my westward neighbors. You wish to gift our work to Agir while claiming it as your own? Odes asked, offense audible in his voice, which gets Akiran to scowl at him. Those soldiers were given to me, were they not? It is my right to do with them as I wish. Quite right, Lord Akiran, Mycen agreed, you may use the pawns as you wish. And if that includes trading their services, why not do so? Exactly. Ah, you have an excellent understanding of how things work, Sir Mycen. He sneered at the warlock's companion. You could stand to learn from him, wastrel. Odes stared at him for a moment, then bowed his head. My apologies, Lord Akiran, for my presumption. Humph. You're lucky I am feeling magnanimous enough to let your insults slide. He pointed his finger at the upstart. But do not think my patience is limitless. Of course not, Lord Akiran. Mycen smiled. Now then, I believe a part of our deal was that we be allowed a pick of subjects from the villages in your territory. Yes, of course, you'll have your pick of the peasants, though I would prefer you stick to vagrants instead of anyone actually useful. I still need to fill my coffers, after all. We'll make sure to use discretion in our selections, the mage agreed, continuing to smile. Akiran could see why Agir sent him as a representative. The man knew how to properly interact with his better. He admittedly wasn't sure what exactly these experiments the Order of Mages intended to carry out were, but he couldn't care less if they had to take a few peasants to carry them out, just so long as it didn't inconvenience him. As you will then. For now, I have important business to get back to, so if you would. Akiran paused as the doors were suddenly shoved open, a sneer crossing his face as he glared at the servant that dared interrupt him. You had better be one of those oafs I sent to get refreshments, or else I'll. Lord Mycen, the imperial princess returned to the palace and has claimed the throne, the messenger in black rapidly explained, ignoring Akiran completely, much to his aggravation. Now see here. Ludwig von Agir has been deposed and arrested as a result. And that took the wind right out of his sails. He is currently imprisoned and awaiting trial while Marquis Vestra was eliminated. I believe the newly crowned emperor intends to continue a purge of our assets while consolidating her own power. So she really has turned against us, Odes griped, his eyes narrowed in irritation. We should have moved to secure her obedience earlier. Wasn't Bias still keeping an eye on her? She was, though I doubt it was a close one, Mycen replied while disregarding the increasingly pale and sweaty Akiran. At this point, I consider Bias's judgment to be compromised. She took her twin's death poorly, so I doubt she is taking Solon's demise any better. Hold on, one moment, Akiran interrupted. What was that about Duke Agir being arrested? The messenger raised an eyebrow, before looking towards Mycen, who nodded indulgently. Go ahead, Kirix, share what you have to share. Of course, Lord Mycen. As stated previously, Ludwig von Agir was deposed and arrested by the newly crowned Emperor Edelgard von Hresvelg. That, no, hold on, that can't be right. Akiran yelped, what does that mean for me? I mean, us. What does that mean for us? Well, presumably, the Emperor will declare that she does not support this action of yours, Lord Akiran, Mycen answered, before glancing at the messenger. I assume she used Agir's support of Lord Akiran as the casus for removing the Duke from his position. Yes, Lord Mycen, that appears to be the case. Humph. She's grown into quite the cunning little schemer to move so quickly against us. Akiran swallowed, his dreams crumbling to dust in front of his eyes. Without the Empire's support, he couldn't possibly stand up to the Alliance. They might even declare him a rebel lord if he stayed on his current course. And if the Empire wouldn't take him while the Lords of Leicester turned against him. Well, Sir Mycen, thank you for visiting today, but I really should get back to work. I have some letters to send to Count Gloucester, simply important correspondence, a matter between lords, that sort of thing. You know, when I heard you were called the Weather Vane, I thought it meant you had some sense of self-preservation, Akiran, Mycen commented, regarding the ambitious minor lord with far less amusement than he had up until that point. Are you truly so stupid that you'd try to turn on us while we're right in front of you? How dare you? Do you have any idea who you're talking to? Akiran demanded, his anger at being insulted overriding his concern. I am Lord Akiran Lethe Phlegathon. This is my castle, and I will not be insulted inside of it. Guards. Remove these men from my presence immediately. Guards. Akiran scowled, glaring around the room at the guards that should have been moving to aid him, but were instead just staring at him with contempt. And as he looked around, he started to notice the servants in the room with him had stopped working in favor of staring at him too, before one maid glanced at Mycen. Lord Mycen, your orders. Disperse. There is no need to keep up this charade any further, especially now that this beast has outlived its usefulness. Of course, my lord. Akiran's own servant bowed, before a flash of dark magic caused the woman's skin to turn a pale white as her clothes shifted into dark robes, a change that continued with every person present as Akiran slowly realized he was surrounded by dark mages and knights that had disguised themselves as his castle staff. What in the world is this? You did not honestly think we would trust a beast of your reputation so readily, did you? Mycen asked, some amusement showing at Akiran's growing fear. We already had to deal with Agir pushing his boundaries with us, and I had no intention of allowing that to happen again, not when we've invested so much into this project here. He smiled, and it was a cruel, sadistic thing that lent true malice to his pale visage. I had planned to replace you eventually, but I didn't expect the time to come so soon. Ods, if you would. Hold on, this is why you brought me. Ods grimaced. I have to look like that thing. I need a man with a firmer spine to play his role, Mycen noted as Akiran tried to back away, sweat running down his face as it dawned on him just how much danger he was in. I realize it is not as much time as you could have had to learn his mannerisms, but then we do not need an exact mimicry. Wait, hold on. Why you can't seriously be thinking of killing me? Akiran insisted, because for all his faults, he could at least recognize a threat to his own life. Why you don't understand, I'm useful. I am incredibly useful. I am the Lord of the Rivers, I control the Great Bridge of Myrddin, I can be of great use to you. I have powerful friends. Yes, I am well aware of that, Mycen replied as Odes started to approach the Craven Lord, dark magic gathering at the younger warlock's hands. The fact that you have value is the whole reason we are doing this. Otherwise we would have simply disposed of you outright. What? And no, stay back. Akiran demanded, before yelping as his back collided with his desk. And no, you can't do this, not to me. I am Akiran. I am meant for so much more than this. And I agree, Akiran. Mycen smirked. The man called Akiran will indeed play a very important role in the coming days. Do not worry. I will make sure your name goes down in history. Akiran would have screamed, but then Oath's hand was on his face, and all he saw was darkness. So, how do you feel, Lord Archeron? Mycen mockingly asked. Ugh, don't call me by that beast's name, Akiran complained, glaring at Mycen as he seemed to try to ease any aches in his flesh. You really couldn't have found me a better body. Probably, but this was the best option, especially since just disposing of him would leave too many questions. At least I don't have to act like him, Akiran muttered as he felt his face to make sure everything fit well. I am definitely getting rid of this mustache. Just don't make it too obvious that something has changed. The last thing we need is that Imperial brat to come down on us. Humph. What if we fake some sort of traumatic event? Give my character a reason to change so drastically, perhaps. Mycen laughed. You mean like having his body stolen from him? If you want to fake an assassination attempt, go ahead, though do try to get some further utility from it outside of simply getting rid of the mustache. It doesn't need to be an assassination, just something sufficiently traumatizing. Maybe we could let a demonic beast loose and have it as an excuse to collect materials? Or perhaps I'll just change because of my changing fortunes, I am meant to have grown a spine, so perhaps a change in looks would be conducive. You're meant to be stubbornly digging your heels in, not transforming into a warrior prince. I wasn't planning to go that far, Odes complained, before grimacing as he examined his new face in the reflection of a window. Ugh, maybe I could start wearing a mask. Do you plan to start calling yourself the Flame Emperor then? Mycen mocked, before pausing as a thought occurred. Now that might be a point of interest. What? Using the Flame Emperor? I thought the rat had turned against us. She has, but nothing says we cannot use that identity to our own ends. It would be useful if we could reveal her identity after using it for our own ends. Show her the price for turning against us. Fair point. One problem though. Mycen raised an eyebrow at Odessa. I'm not as short as her. Clearly we would be getting someone else, Mycen responded, calling him an idiot under his breath. That Kronia girl would be a good choice. Because she's short. Yes, but also because she's a vicious and unsubtle sadist who is entirely loyal to our cause. She would never hold any sympathy for the beasts, nor allow personal attachments to make her loyalty waver in the same way Bias has. He smirked. She'll be perfect. Chapter 88, The Last Day Together. Shay had to admit, it was kind of weird not having Byleth around. It wasn't the first time the two of them had been apart for a while, especially when they had missions to do for the church, but that was part of what made it weird. Her sister hadn't left in the middle of the month before, so it felt kind of weird, especially since she kept what she was actually doing over in Inbera secret. Perhaps she eloped. Arvel offered half-heartedly, which earned an immediate frown from Shay. Byleth wouldn't do that. Besides, if she did, she'd invite me to the wedding. I doubt you know what elopement means. Hey, of course I do. Even if it was a secret marriage, Bai would tell me. I suppose that is fair, perhaps they are conspiring together. What would they be conspiring about? Who knows? Perhaps they aim to conquer the world. PFF, Bai wouldn't do that. And I don't think Edelgard would either. She's kind of intense, but she'd probably stop at just conquering Fodlan. Why is that your logic? It makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, if she wanted to conquer the world, she could have killed that Almiran prince and started a war with Almira. That could have led to conquering them. There is something unnerving about you using logic. Shut up. Anyways, Bai's supposed to be getting back today, I think. Maybe I should try to go find her ahead of time. You'll get lost, Arvel bluntly stated. I won't. Probably. Shay blinked, then glanced over to the entrance of the classroom. Oh, hey Dimitri. Why are you over here? I heard you talking to yourself, he replied. Why are you hanging around in your classroom? Classes should be over already. Well yeah, they are, but I don't have anything better to do and I didn't feel like training. She crossed her arms over her chest. I guess I could have hung out with someone, but everyone's pretty busy getting ready for that ball dance thing. I guess I should too, since Hilda, Mercedes, and Dorothea are gonna be helping me with that, but also the way they smiled at me earlier filled me with dread for some reason. I can understand that. I've never been one for balls myself. Why, the only time I enjoyed dancing was with an old friend of mine. Oh. Yes, when I was young she taught me how to dance. It was a long time ago, but I look upon that time fondly. Heh, what, was she your first crush or something? Shay had to admit, that was the first time she saw Dimitri recoil in visible disgust. Please, don't suggest such a thing again. Shay blinked. Eesh, did things end that badly between you two? No, you are aware that I had a stepmother, right? Yeah. Well, my stepmother had a daughter, and while I do not know the full circumstances of what occurred, I consider her daughter more of a sister to me. Oh. Oh. You're like me and bi. Well, minus the stepmother part, since her mom's dead too. Shay paused for a moment, because she was pretty sure Dimitri's stepmom was also dead, but she probably shouldn't bring that up. Could it be? Have you actually learned tact? It's a miracle. Arvel snarked, prompting a frown from Shay. Ugh, you shut up, I know what tact is. Shay. Dimitri said, frowning slightly, I did not say anything. Oh. Whoops, heh. Guess I just, Shay racked her brain for a good excuse. I probably heard the voice of the goddess. Because, this is a monastery. The sound of Arvel's palm meeting their face went unheard by Dimitri, though it was extremely audible to Shay. Shay, forgive me for bringing this up, but I believe you once mentioned having a voice in your head. The prince mentioned, which made Shay stiffen. Oh, right, I think I did, yeah, back with the Almiran thing, huh. It is truly a miracle you can keep any secrets, Arvel chided while Dimitri seemed, almost relieved. I see, Shay, I would like you to know that you're not alone. Well yeah, I know that, Shay paused as his meaning registered. Wait, do you have a weird ghost person that follows you around and tells you to kill people? Arvel scoffed, offended. I do not tell you to kill people. I offer prudent advice depending upon your circumstances. Yes. Exactly, well, not quite exactly that, it is less a single ghost and more, Dimitri cleared his throat. My apologies. I've been haunted for such a long time and to know another shares my circumstances. Shay paused. She hadn't really considered how weird and potentially distressing it would probably be for someone else to be haunted by a strange ghost person. Though Byleth didn't seem too bothered by hers, then again, Byleth didn't get bothered by much. Hey, it's okay. I get it, it's weird and annoying having a ghost talking to you all the time. How am I weird and annoying? Arvel complained. But I'm sure you can get a handle on them. What's your weird ghost like anyways? Well, I hear the voices of my father, stepmother, and best friend telling me to avenge their deaths, Dimitri explained. Oh, wow, that's heavier than I expected. Though I guess Arvel does try to get me to fight Byleth, so I can understand that part, Shay said, earning a worried glance from Dimitri. The ghost haunting you tries to get you to kill your sister. Kind of. Kind of, it sounds worse when you say it out loud like that. Sorry. No, it's fine, I just try to ignore them when they get like that anyway. So. You've got a vengeance quest, that makes sense, I know about that whole tragedy thing, not to downplay it, so. Any guesses on who might have done it? Do you have an evil uncle? Oh, or some kind of sinister advisor? Dimitri blinked, before frowning. Shay, my life is not a storybook. Right, sorry, I know. I actually came to the academy hoping to find some clues on that subject, actually, he admitted, I've tried looking within Faerghus, but my own investigations have been fruitless. I don't know what, precisely, I thought I might find here, but... Hey, Dimitri, just a quick question, but why did you think Garag Mach would have the answer you're looking for? He sighed. I don't think I can answer that here. There's a reason, but it's a long story to explain it. Well, hey, I have time. Shay smiled up at him. I'm just hanging around anyway. I appreciate the offer, but, some other time, all right. Well, what do we have here? Claude said with a smirk as he entered the classroom, catching Dimitri off guard and earning an amused look from Shay, the Blue Lions house leader coming by to try to poach everyone's favorite purple-haired merc back to his class. Or were you just looking to invite her to the dance? Dimitri sighed. Neither, Claude. We were just talking. Then his eyes narrowed. And I do hope you weren't listening in on our conversation. Me? Would I do that? No, that doesn't sound like something I would do. I was just coming by to make sure you weren't running off with Shay. It seems like there's been a trend of royals eloping around here. Shay scoffed, audibly amused. Why does everybody think I eloped? I know it's obvious Edelgard has a crush on her, but Byleth is not the type to just run off with someone. Dimitri blinked. She does. Yeah? I mean, it's pretty obvious to me. She did have Hubert in a different carriage instead of having him ride with her and teach, Claude noted, eager to get the rumors flowing. That's completely inappropriate. What would Seath or the Archbishop say? Dimitri suddenly snapped, earning confused looks from Claude and Shay. Dimitri, it's not a big deal, we're just joking around. Yeah, nothing's wrong, no need to shout. Besides, Bi likes Dorothea, so dash. So she's leading her on? Dimitri questioned, his brow furrowed in anger. Shay and Claude glanced at each other before the former spoke. No? I mean, Bi doesn't tell me everything about her love life, probably since I pester her over it because it's funny, but she wouldn't lead anyone on, she's not like that. I've also gotta ask why you seem to care so much, Dimitri, Claude said. Of course I care. I'm her I mean, it is important for the Academy has standards that should be upheld. Shay just looked all the more confused. Wait, since when were you such a stickler for propriety? Since always, obviously. I have always been like this, clearly. Claude, meanwhile, felt both his eyebrows raise before he managed to school his expression. Well hey, if you want to talk to the professor about propriety, you should probably head over now. She and Edelgard should be getting back any second now. Wait, really? Shay pushed herself up from her desk. She's back. I said she's coming back, not that she's, and there she goes. Claude watched as his friend practically vanished from sight, traveling as fast as she could go in a flash of violet light. You know, I really should ask her more about those powers of hers one of these days. So, Dimitri, are you, and he's gone too. His reaction might have implied his princeliness had a crush on Edelgard, but Claude had a feeling it was something else, in part because he really was eavesdropping and caught a good part of that conversation. Fodlaners really needed to learn to talk in private areas when they didn't want people to overhear them. My teacher, before we arrive at the monastery, is it okay if I ask a favor of you? Edelgard asked as the carriage arrived at the town outside Garreg Mach. Of course, what do you need? Byleth answered without hesitation. I do believe I mentioned I had something I wished to inform you about, correct? At Byleth's nod, she continued. If possible, would you be willing to meet me at the Goddess Tower on the night of the ball? Oh, why? Dorothea also wanted to meet her there. Was it related? It is, a special place to my parents. You may take it as foolish, but I think being there will give me the strength for what I need to tell you. Okay, Byleth agreed, nodding as she saw the serious look on Edelgard's face, though she was internally trying to figure out why Dorothea and Edelgard wanted to meet her in the same place. She could also faintly hear an exasperated noise from Suthies, for some reason. I'll make sure to dash. Then both Byleth and Edelgard jolted as the door was suddenly yanked open. Hey there, Bi. Shay shouted, grinning at the two from the doorway. Did everything go well? Yes, it did. Why did you yank the door open? What, am I not supposed to be excited to see you? Shay asked, before turning to Edelgard. Hey, quick question, you two didn't elope, right? What? Edelgard asked, her face burning at the sudden question. Shay, I'm not even dating anyone, why would I suddenly elope? Byleth asked. That's what I thought. But, well, rumors started flying around and well dash. Professor. I must speak with you at once. Blinking, Byleth looked out to see Dimitri rapidly approaching the carriage. Sure. Byleth said, not sure what was going on while Shay winced. Dimitri, please don't dash. Professor, explain your promiscuity at once. My what? Byleth asked, completely confused. Her what? Edelgard yelped. Any relations you might seek to chase are your own business, but as the professor of this academy you must uphold standards. Dimitri shouted as Shay tried to push him back, to little avail as Byleth remained confused about what was happening. Things only continued to get worse as thanks to this happening in a very public place, Byleth found herself getting dragged away by a very stern-faced Seath who wanted some explanation for why Dimitri was yelling at her about her promiscuity. Heh, it sure looks like you were dragged through the ringer, Gerald said, chuckling when he saw an exhausted-looking Byleth slumped on a table. I don't know what I did. Byleth complained as she looked up at her father, apparently people think I'm promiscuous. That earned a pair of raised eyebrows. Really? Yeah, so Seath started lecturing me for several hours, but just when I thought I was free, Raphael walked by and congratulated me on the wedding for some reason. Which just set off Seath again. Byleth sighed. Why are people thinking I eloped with Edelgard? Ah, well, you know how rumors are, Gerald replied, not completely understanding it either. So, aside from that, is everything good? Yeah, everything was handled well. You sure? You seem down, Gerald noted, sitting down across from her. I do. Byleth asked. Well, of course you do, you've been tense since learning that student of yours is leaving the academy, Suthies piped in. Hey, Gerald, how would you feel if I were to suddenly move away? Well, I probably wouldn't be happy about it, but you're an adult, and you can make your own decisions, Gerald responded. But we can always see each other again. Unless you want to run away from me specifically. I wouldn't do that, Byleth immediately denied, frowning deeply, I've been feeling tense lately, and it's weird. It's not like anything else I've felt. Well, it would help if you told me why you were feeling like this. Pausing for a moment, Byleth considered her words. A student of mine is withdrawing from the academy. Well, it's obvious that you're gonna miss them. I mean, you've gotten pretty attached to your students, haven't you? I think so, Byleth said, frowning. Hey, Gerald, do you know if my contract with the academy will end when the academy year ends? I'm not sure. I would imagine they'd make sure to find someone to take over your role, but I don't think they've been looking. Honestly, wouldn't be surprised if Rhea just assumes you're just going to be sticking around for the long haul. That was different. She had just assumed her contract would end when the year ended, but if there wasn't an actual end until they found a replacement. Come on, kid, no need to look so down. That ball is happening tomorrow, right? So best get ready for it to make it a good night. I guess, yeah, Byleth agreed, frowning as she got up. She needed to have a talk with Rhea after the ball. As much as she liked teaching, she had plans for her future, and they didn't involve staying at Garreg Mach for her entire life. I do apologize for the inconvenience my departure may cause the academy, but I feel ascending to the throne of Adrestia is the only reasonable action I can take at this time, Edelgard explained, before bowing her head to the Archbishop. I hope for your understanding in this time of transition, and I thank you for all you have done for me while I attended the Officers' Academy. I second Her Majesty's words, Hubert said, bowing his head too and barely hiding the smirk on his face. Thank you for the many opportunities you have given us while we attended your esteemed institution. Rhea smiled, nodding to the two students in turn. You are quite welcome, children. I am glad to see the positive impact the Academy has had on both of you, and I understand the circumstances you were faced with. I can only offer my praise in how you handled the avarice of the former Duke Aegir and my condolences that your school year was cut so short. If you wish to return for the graduation ceremony at the end of the year, I would be happy to host you once more. Then I look forward to seeing you then, Lady Rhea, Edelgard said as she straightened. A part of her considered the idea of bringing the Imperial army with her to that reunion, before discarding it as far too mean. Though Hubert would probably be all for it. I have to say, this is highly irregular, though I suppose we should have expected something like this might happen given the royal heirs we were hosting this year, Seath commented. I presume you have already decided who will take over for you as the Black Eagle's house leader. Of course. I intend to pass it to Ferdinand. He is a good friend and I believe he will be a worthy leader. A fine choice, Rhea said, still smiling. I imagine the young heir of Aegir would be happy for the opportunity to redeem himself following his father's poor choices. Edelgard had to stop herself from pointing out that his father's actions weren't his own. For now, she just nodded. I suppose we'll make an official announcement during the ball. Seath suggested. That would be as good a time as any, Edelgard responded. If I may, I wish to thank you, Rhea spoke up, surprising Edelgard. It may have been fate, but you and the other house leaders brought Geralt and his family here. For that, I owe you greatly. I would agree, having the professor here has been quite the boon. I have learned many things from her, Edelgard replied, meeting Rhea's gaze. Perhaps with her help, we can help mend the relationship between the Empire and the Church. If at all possible, I was seeking to re-establish the Southern Church. Oh. That seemed to surprise Rhea. That is a surprise to hear, though not an unwelcome one. I understand the Southern Church caused many issues in the past, so it pleases me to hear you are willing to work past that. Of course. I'll make sure to write once I have proper candidates for the position, Edelgard said, bowing to the Archbishop before she and Hubert turned around to leave. Perhaps that second bow was a bit much, Your Majesty, Hubert noted once the doors closed behind them. As long as it keeps up appearances, Edelgard responded, but for now, let's just enjoy ourselves. The ball tomorrow will likely be the last peaceful day we'll have for some time. I have no idea how peaceful it will be, given how busy I will be fending off anyone who wishes to dance with you, Hubert muttered. Come now Hubert, I'm sure even you have someone you wish to dance with. None that I would be willing to forsake my duties. There you are, Edie, Hubie. Dorothea greeted, waving as the two before grabbed Edelgard's arm. Come on, I want to hear all about your trip. Need I remind you just who you're grabbing onto, Dorothea? Hubert asked with a warning tone. Why, I'm just grabbing onto our dear Edie. Unless there's something you want to announce to everyone, Dorothea teased. It's all right, Hubert, Edelgard assured, and there's nothing to say, Dorothea. Is that so? Well, either way you and I need to get ready for the dance. Unless you have someone else you'd like to take as a date. Dorothea. Feeling her face grow flushed, Edelgard looked away. Not hearing a no, Dorothea teased. Ah, there you are, Lady Edelgard. Ferdinand greeted, a smile on his face as he was followed by the Black Eagles. I had heard you arrived, but I had yet to see you. She probably just wanted to rest after her long trip, Lindhart muttered. But she was in a carriage, why would she need to rest? Caspar asked. Apparently Diddy came marching up to her carriage yelling about something, so maybe that's it. Happy suggested. Was everything okay? There is nothing to worry about, Marianne. Dimitri simply misunderstood something, Edelgard responded. Well, I hope the professor is okay, Flane said. I heard that my brother gave her a very long and stern lecture, so I hope she is not too tired. The professor is very strong, a lecture will not defeat her. Petra declared. Seath isn't that bad, right? Bernadetta asked. Even if he has gotten victory over our professor, I have just the spell to make sure she can power through any lecture next time. Constance added with full enthusiasm. That would have been helpful earlier, Byleth remarked, walking up to the group. Professor, there you are. Ferdinand greeted with a smile. Thank you for assisting Lady Edelgard on her trip. It's the least I can do. I'm just glad we could get back in time for the dance. Yes, tomorrow might be the last time I'll be able to be with all of you all at once, Edelgard noted. As such, I have a proposition. In 5 years' time, the Millennium Festival will occur, why don't we all make sure to meet here again? Oh, a class reunion, that sounds fun, Dorothea commented. That it does. I shall likely be staying here at Garreg Mach with my brother, but I'll make sure to greet you all warmly when you visit. Flame said with a bright smile. That sounds great. Casper agreed, we'll make it the biggest party around. It does sound lovely. Bernie isn't going to be left out. Bernadetta declared. Even if I must swim the ocean, I shall return. Petra agreed. Well, I suppose that I could pry myself away from however busy I will be to visit you all. Constance decided, prompting a nod from Happy. If Coco is in, I'm in too. I would be remiss to miss such an event, and I swear my dance moves will outshine even you, Dorothea. Ferdinand boasted, getting Dorothea to let out an amused huff. It sounds like a pain, but you guys will probably be more annoying if I try to skip out, Linhard mumbled. Heh, it seems that is everyone then, Hubert noted. Not everyone yet. Turning her gaze towards Byleth, Edelgard smiled. How about it, Professor? Yeah, that sounds great. No matter what, I'll make sure to be here, Byleth agreed, returning the smile. It was a promise she intended to keep. Chapter 89, The Night of the Ball. There were times when Byleth wondered how she would have done if she had joined the monastery as a student instead of a teacher. Usually those times related to her wearing an academy uniform, either because her sister and students wanted to see how she would look in one, or in circumstances like these where she didn't have that many formal clothes and so elected to wear a formal uniform instead of spending her money on something fancier. She did add a black shoulder cape to her own version of the uniform, mostly to set herself apart from the students. Not that she really needed to, considering she knew who she was and she did still have her sword at her side. She did kind of prefer the silver version of the uniform her sister had got her though, it just felt like a nice personal touch. Though she could add some pink to it instead, that might be cute. I must say, it's certainly interesting how the most self-interest you show is when it comes to fashion, Suthies noted. It feels nice being pretty. Certainly. I shall not deny that wearing clothes you like is something everyone enjoys. Hey there, bye. Shay greeted, making the two look over at her and pause, their eyes widening in surprise. Rather than her uniform or her normal clothes, Shay was wearing a full ball gown, one that was a mix of royal purple and silver that cinched at the waist with a violet sash and poofed out at the skirt. Her hair was also curled into ringlets, and she seemed to be wearing blush and eyeliner too. What do you think? You look very pretty, Byleth said, smiling as she gave her sister a thumbs up. Though I think I might have underdressed for this. No come on By, you look good. Shay reassured, prompting a hum from Arvel. You are far better dressed than she is. Arvel, come on, you know I'm all for competitions, but this isn't one of them, Shay said, frowning at her friend. Humph, this spirit your sister hosts certainly has quite the nerve if they're commenting on your sense of fashion, Suthies muttered, making a guess on what Arvel had said. Shay, if Arvel is saying anything rude about my clothes, tell them to shut up, Byleth requested, catching everyone off guard. Dorothea said I can dress how I want. PFT well, you heard her Arvel. I was not dash. Arvel took a deep breath. They would choose their battles wisely and not get into an argument with children. Shay, please tell your sister I am sorry for disparaging her clothes. She looks lovely. Arvel thinks you look cute, Shay said, prompting an aggravated sound from the pale spirit. Is the disparaging spirit just shy? Suthies teased, even if only Byleth could hear her. Thank you, Arvel, Byleth said, before focusing on Shay. Now come on, we should get to the ball. Oh, right, I am getting paid so gotta make sure I actually show up. Paid? Paid for what? Byleth asked, though Shay moved ahead as quickly as she could in the dress before she got an answer. If nothing else, your sister can take care of herself, so no need to worry, Suthies assured as Byleth followed behind her sister. All right, Byleth replied, before walking out into the crowd of students. She wasn't the only one who wore the formal uniform, though she did notice a few students had chosen to dress up in even fancier clothes, so Shay wasn't alone in her ball gown. Immediately, She could see Annette and Mercedes had dressed up, the former wearing a blue gown and chatting cheerfully at Felix, who seemed to be at least paying attention to her, while the latter wore a modest, light brown gown and had her hair unbound from its usual side tie as she danced with Dido. Nice to see the Blue Lions were having some fun, though Byleth couldn't help notice Sylvain striking out pretty badly in trying to ask another student to dance, while Ingrid clearly decided she would prefer to stick by the buffet instead of bothering with a date. As for Ash, Byleth idly noted that he seemed to be hanging out with Yuri and Balthus, possibly not entirely by choice, if judging by his somewhat uncomfortable expression as Balthus regaled him with some tale of his adventures. Byleth was a little concerned, but Ash gave her a small smile and a signal that he was okay when she looked worried, so she decided to just leave it for now. She did make a note that Yuri had decided to dress up though, wearing an ostentatious all-white suit, while Balthus had actually put on a shirt. Good to see he was getting into the formal spirit of things. As for her own class, Byleth did feel a slight frown come to her face when she noticed Hubert and Linhard were just wearing their normal uniforms, but, then again, did she really expect any better? Dorothea looked good though, especially because she had decided to wear the dancer outfit she had won from the White Heron Cup. It looked good on her, and it seemed many people agreed judging by the amount of admirers she had. Not that Dorothea was paying attention to that, instead, she seemed to be encouraging Caspar and Petra to dance together, a happy smile on her face as she made sure they both knew what they were doing. Byleth briefly considered that she should have worn her own dancer's outfit to the ball, and probably would have if she knew it was an option, before discarding that thought in favor of continuing to check on her students. As one might expect, Ferdinand had dressed up for the occasion, wearing a crimson suit with white pants as he led Flaine through the steps of the dance, smiling encouragingly at her while she gave her best effort to follow his movement. Also extremely expected and obvious was seeing Happy and Constance together, though Byleth was a little surprised to see Happy had dressed up for the occasion. Probably at Constance's urging, considering their dresses seemed to match in style, though not color, green and black for Happy, and pink and blue for Constance. They weren't the only girl-girl pairing at the dance either, as Byleth spotted Marianne with Hilda. The blue-haired eagle was just wearing her formal uniform, but the pink-haired deer had dressed up in a pink, red, and black dress of her own, her hair done up differently from her usual twin tails and a faint blush on her face as she guided Marianne through their dance. They looked like they were having a nice time, so Byleth just left them to it as she scanned the room, looking to spot the last of her eagles. Along the way, she did notice Raphael had joined Ingrid at the buffet and the two had gotten to some lively chatting while Ignatz seemed to have been dragged into the conversation with Balthus, Yuri, and Ash. At least the latter seemed relieved to have someone else dealing with the wolves. As for Leonie, Byleth felt a slight flash of surprise as she saw her father's apprentice practically pulling Lawrence onto the dance floor, the purple-haired and purple-suited noble seeming just as bewildered as Leonie insisted he owed her a dance. For what, Byleth wasn't sure, but hey, it wasn't her business. Unless the two started making out, then she was pretty sure she had a responsibility as a professor to stop that from happening. Probably not something she needed to worry about though, at least from those two. Now, as for Bernadetta. Byleth frowned to herself, before heading over to one of the tables and peeking under the tablecloth. She didn't find Bernadetta under there, which was both kind of a surprise and kind of a relief, though now she felt a little concerned, up until she noticed the easily frightened eagle fidgeting with the purple gloves of her gown, her usually messy hair actually brushed to the point it looked smooth. She was even wearing a few little black bows in it as she seemed to be working up her nerve to talk to Hubert, ever so slowly approaching him on her shaky legs. Byleth smiled, internally wishing Bernadetta luck, though she did feel a little concerned as Bernie seemed to falter, muttering to herself anxiously, something another student seemed to notice, judging by how Emily huffed in visible annoyance before walking up to Hubert and shoving him toward Bernadetta. Hubert looked bewildered, then angered at the sudden shove, before he noticed Bernadetta hurry up to him, asking if he was okay. He responded in the affirmative, though he seemed a little distracted by the shorter eagle's change in clothing, and Byleth smiled in some satisfaction before she went up to Emily and gave her a little nudge. Who the F? Oh. Hey, Professor, Emily greeted, which was actually kind of remarkable. Hello Emily. Are you enjoying the dance? It's different, I guess. Not really my thing. Have you asked someone to dance yet? Maybe later. She scratched her head, then gave Byleth a glance. Do you want something? Byleth shook her head. I just want my student to enjoy herself. And it was true. Even if she had her concerns about Emily being an imposter, some Agarthan assassin or similar, she wanted her students to be happy. And Emily was her student. I'm in a different class now, Professor. You don't have to worry about me. Besides, well, whatever. I guess I might as well enjoy this while it lasts. With that, she walked off, not as agitated as she once was. It was nice to see. You really are too naive, Suthis noted, catching Byleth by some surprise since she didn't expect her to speak up at the dance. If you are correct and that girl really is an Agarthan, she almost certainly murdered the original Emily Korsh to assume her form. A girl died so she could pretend to be her. That fact does not disappear just because she is relaxing in the absence of conflict. I know. But I want my students to be happy, Byleth murmured back, earning a sigh from Suthis. Too naive and too kind for your own good, she complained, though there was a faint fondness in her words. Hey Claude. There you are. Shay called out upon seeing her house leader in the fancy formal uniform, from where he was standing with the other two house leaders. All three of them were in those formal uniforms, though they were also wearing sashes in their house colors. Probably a house leader thing. Oh hey Dimitri, hi Edelgard. Shay. Dimitri exclaimed, looking caught off guard by her appearance, you look, well, you look good. Very, radiant. You could just tell her she looks nice, Edelgard commented, before nodding to Shay. I see you put a lot of work into your appearance. Well done. You look like Lorenz's sister instead of Teach's, Claude stated, not at all hiding his amusement at her current state of dress, which earned a scandalized gasp from Dimitri. I do? Well, I guess we both have purple hair, Shay considered, tilting her head in thought as she crossed her arms over her chest, before she paused. Hey, no trying to distract me with an image of Lorenz in a dress, you know what you owe me. Okay, not what I was planning, but interesting that's where your mind went, Claude muttered, as he pulled out a bag of gold coins to hand over. Heh, thank you for your payment. Shay said, making sure to announce that quite loudly as she took the bag. Then she looked down at her dress. Shit, I forgot this doesn't have pockets. She frowned, then seemed to study her own chest. Maybe I could do like Manuela. Nah, the bag's too big, I would look like I have 3 boobs. What? Dimitri asked, his face reddening while Edelgard sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose. Claude, why don't you tend to your date, she requested, internally wondering how she ever thought Shay could possibly be a spy. She knew the girl wasn't completely unintelligent, but it was impossible not to regard her as at least somewhat stupid. Trying to get rid of me already. Yes. Hopefully before Shay elects to shove her payment in her skirts. Would it fit between the ruffles? Shay asked, glancing at her gown with some curiosity. All right, come on before you flash everyone at the dance, Claude said, pulling her along equals. We can talk later, Your Majesty, but for now, I might as well enjoy what my gold got me. Oh, right, see you guys. I see Shay is the same as ever. I doubt she'll come by and talk with us later, Dimitri commented with a small frown as he watched the pair head onto the dance floor, which earned a huff from Edelgard. Isn't that a good thing in our case? I noticed you wanted to say something while I explained what happened in Inver. Edelgard turned, frowning up at the tall blonde. So go on, say what you wish to say. Dimitri sighed, crossing his arms over his chest and frowning. Are you really leaving the Officers' Academy entirely? Yes, I am. I have to. Duke Agir's overreach has shown that I cannot spend the rest of my year in leisure, even if I want to. Dimitri grimaced. I would not call our year leisurely. It could have been worse, she replied, well aware that it could have been far, far worse than it had. It shouldn't have been that bad to begin with. And that's not even mentioning that the church still hasn't caught the last of those cultists, nor the Death Knight or the Flame Emperor. Edelgard frowned. I know that, Dimitri, but that is the church's responsibility to deal with. My responsibility is to my people and my nation. I cannot let myself forget that responsibility, even if I would rather remain in these peaceful days at the academy. And I do not need you to protect me. I am not trying to. Then what was that spectacle yesterday? She questioned with a deep frown. You were accusing Professor Byleth of promiscuity. Dmitri stiffened, his face turning pink. Ah, that, I admit, I may have overreacted. Why was it your place to react at all? You and I are nothing more than classmates, Dmitri. Even then, we are not in the same house. I do not see why you should have any investment in me beyond the simple courtesy we pay each other as students who attend the same academy. Dmitri worked his jaw, trying to decide what he should say. He could feel the chance for answers start to slip away from him. He should have talked to her before. He should have let her know what connection they had. He should have checked to see if she truly didn't remember their days together at all. Because he could see, quite clearly now, that she didn't. He really was nothing more than a stranger to her. My apologies, but if I may, can I ask one question? I do hope you are not planning on asking me to dance after this. No, I'd rather not make a fool of myself when dancing with someone as skilled as you, Dmitri said, a sad smile on his face. I wanted to ask, that dagger you always have, its design seems to be of Faerghus, correct? Yes, what about it? You know, in Faerghus blades are considered tools of destiny, Dmitri responded, something to be used to cut a better path forward to the future. Edelgard frowned, unsure of what he was meaning by this yet also, feeling something distinctly familiar about it. Humph, that is quite the belief. Why do you bring it up? Dmitri took in a deep breath as he remembered Byleth's words about not understanding one another without talking. I'm glad you have cut your own path, El. He could see the look of confusion cross her face, along with the moment it turned towards realization as the truth dawned on her. You were the boy in Faerghus. She laughed again, bewildered and disbelieving, but it was clear she understood. Did you know? This whole time. I did. Well, we were both young then. I can imagine the memories would fade in time. He smiled ruefully. I did not expect you to forget me completely though. I did not mean to. There were extenuating circumstances. I heard there was a plague in Adrestia. Perhaps, passed from Faerghus. Edelgard startled, her eyes widening before she shook her head. Dmitri, no, it wasn't, goddess, that would be horrific, there was no plague, Dmitri. It wasn't, did you think it was your fault? Maybe. Before you asked me just now, I doubt I would have realized it, but, I think there was some part of me that felt it had something to do with that. That perhaps you hated me for some fault of mine. He shrugged. It would hardly be the first friendship I ruined. It wasn't your fault, Dmitri. There wasn't a plague. My siblings were murdered, Dmitri. And, she took a breath and couldn't keep her shoulders from shaking with some emotion she couldn't describe. She almost felt like laughing at the absurdity of the situation. I wish I had more time to explain. This whole time. Her mind went back to the night when they had first met Byleth. About how she had tried to get Claude and Dmitri killed. Edelgard? Are you okay? Dmitri asked, breaking her out of her thoughts. My apologies, this is just a lot to take in. I understand, would you like me to get you some water? He asked, concern evident in his voice. No, I just need to sit down for a moment. Okay. Edelgard, I know you are leaving, but I hope we can speak again before you leave, Dmitri requested. Of course, Edelgard agreed, before walking away. She needed to clear her head. Get some air to try and think this through. And where do you think you're going? Catherine asked as she clapped a hand down on her shoulder. You really shouldn't be trying to leave your own farewell party. I am not trying to. I'm just trying to get some fresh air. Sure you're not, and I'm sure it has nothing to do with the professor leaving already, Catherine said with a raised eyebrow. Wait, she left? Edelgard asked, her eyes looking around to see if Byleth had already gone to the goddess tower. That she did, and while she can come and go, students really should stay at the ball, Catherine responded, smirking as she pulled Edelgard away from the door. "Come on, I'm sure there's plenty of people who want to dance with you." "There you are, Edie," Dorothea called out, getting their attention as she approached. "I was looking for you. I was starting to think you didn't want to dance with your date." No, I just wanted to get some air." "You can get some air later. Come on, enjoy yourself," Catherine insisted, pushing Edelgard towards Dorothea, who smiled as she caught her. "Heh, come on Edie. Dorothea grinned as she pulled her towards the dance floor. "Are you okay? You seem pale," Dorothea asked once they were in the middle of the dance floor. The music and everyone talking kept their conversation private as she spoke quietly. "I just learned something very important," Edelgard said, unsure of what else to say. "Definitely seems like it," Dorothea replied, taking her hands as she began to lead the pair in a dance. "That's the second time I've seen you looking so pale. Though, no need to talk about it if you don't want to." "Thank you," Edelgard murmured, before she looked around, watching the various students dancing and talking. It seems Yuri had been amused enough by Sylvain striking out so much that now he was leading him on the dance floor, while off in the distance she could see Cyril talking with Shamir, likely catching up with his mentor. Shay and Claude were certainly making quite the scene as they danced, neither of them that skilled but certainly eager. Behind her, Edelgard could hear Catherine giving Lysithea advice of some sort, one which Lysithea vehemently denied needing. "Coin for your thoughts?" Dorothea asked. "I am simply realizing how much I'll miss this place," Edelgard answered. "Well, it's not like you won't be coming back. I mean, we did promise to have a class reunion here, and I'm sure despite how busy you'll be able to find some time away from being the Emperor." "Maybe, I suppose we'll have to see," Edelgard said. "Yup, and if you're feeling lonely, well, the Mittelfrank Opera House is near the palace. "That does sound nice," Edelgard admitted. "It has been quite some time since I've been to the opera, but it has provided some comfort in the past." "Oh. Yes, I actually did see one of your performances before. It helped bring some normalcy back to my life." "Well, I'm glad I could help then. And the Emperor is always welcome to visit," Dorothea teased, getting Edelgard to blush. Right. Though I must say, it's a bit of a surprise to see that the professor left so early. I wonder if my letter had anything to do with it." "Letter?" "Yes, I left one for her like I left for you. Did you not read it?" "Ah." Edelgard frowned. "If you left an unmarked letter, Hubert likely threw it away while I was out." "Goddess dammit, Hubie," Dorothea muttered. "Well, either way, we should make sure to get out as soon as we can so she's not alone out there for too long." "Yes, that would be for the best," Edelgard muttered, before glancing up at Dorothea. "If I may ask, are you actually being genuine when you talked about you, the professor, and I?" "Why wouldn't I be?" "Because it's something I cannot fully understand myself. I can understand if you were attempting to do so if you did not want me to ignore my own feelings, but there is no need to do this. I understand that it might be tradition for emperors to do something like that, but you don't need to dash." Edelgard, that caught the Emperor off guard as she heard her friend call her by her name. "I'm doing this because I want to. You like the professor and me, I like you and the professor, and, well, Professor Byleth might have her difficulties with her emotions, but I'm sure she likes the two of us as well. And honestly, the tradition is just an excuse really. Even if we don't get married, isn't it enough for all of us to be with the ones we care about? Even if it means a life of hardship." You know, Lawrence said something similar, about how a life of nobility is something most commoners aren't going to be ready for. I guess the life of royalty is even harder than that. Edelgard moved her hand to hold on to Dorothea's. "There's something important I was planning on telling the professor. I think I want you to hear it as well." "Well, I'd love to hear it, so we better sneak out when we can." "Excuse me, my apologies for interrupting the festivities, but there is something to announce." Seath spoke up, catching everyone's attention. "I suppose I should get ready," Edelgard said, about to pull back, before feeling Dorothea gently squeeze her hand. "Make sure to take care of yourself, okay Edie?" "Of course, thank you for everything, Dorothea." Edelgard smiled at her, before she bowed to the songstress. Turning around, Edelgard approached Seath, and stood nearby as he continued talking. Now, I understand much has happened this year. However, this is of great importance. He glanced over at Edelgard, before nodding to her. Taking center stage, she looked out over everyone. Thank you for your attention, Edelgard began, taking in the sight of all the students she had spent so long with. Familiar faces, all looking up at her. Recently, I temporarily left the academy to travel to Inver. Wait. A matter of grave importance demanded my attention. Where is Emily? As such, I would like to formally announce that I, Edelgard von Hresvelg, am now the Emperor. A loud explosion, one strong enough to shake the glass of the building they were in, sounded out. Immediately, panicked screams were heard throughout the building, wondering what was going on. Dimly aware of Seath trying to calm down the students, Edelgard rushed out of the building. Once she was out under the night sky, Edelgard felt her heart drop. Up, far above her in the air, the goddess tower was ablaze, crumbling from the hole the fire surrounded. For a moment, it was as if all sound had cut out, as she could only stare in horror at the sight. As she saw something fall from the tower, she couldn't help but scream. Perfis. Letting out a small yawn, Edelgard sat up, her mind slightly bleary before she managed to shake the daze of sleep out of her head. She had a very important day to prepare for, after all. One that she couldn't mess up. Depending on how things go, this could be her last peaceful day with everyone. An incessant knocking at her door caught her attention. Edelgard, can you open up? Professor? What's wrong? Edelgard asked, worried about the slightly hurried tone in Byleth's voice. Frowning, she quickly put on a robe to answer the door, only to stiffen as Byleth quickly pushed her way in and locked the door behind her. Professor. We need to talk. I know who the infiltrators are, Byleth said, looking far too exhausted for someone who she was sure went to sleep early last night. And, I know your secret. Chapter 90, A Meeting in the Goddess Tower. Must you leave so early? Suthis complained, frowning while she floated by Byleth. The night is still young, there is more dancing to be had. I can dance later, Byleth replied as she walked along the route to the Goddess Tower. For now, I need to meet Edelgard and Dorothea. Bah, are they even going to be up there yet? The last I saw, that house leader was still talking with that Dimitri boy and the songstress was helping others dance. They'll be there, Byleth affirmed. They might not be there yet, but I can wait for them. Humph. Fine, but I'm going to start annoying you if she doesn't arrive quickly enough. Byleth could have replied, like you're doing right now, but she was more mature than that, so she let it slide in favor of heading up the Goddess Tower. She recalled the legend of the tower as she walked, and a part of her wondered if it would work if there were 3 people up there. Well, neither of the 2 she was meeting were that religious, so would they even believe in this legend? There had to be a reason why they both wanted to be up here with her. Were they going to elope? No, wait, that didn't make sense. If they were going to do that, Edelgard wouldn't have made such a big deal of becoming the emperor. The thought also made her feel weird, so she was just going to ignore it. Either way, it wasn't long before she was inside the empty stone room at the top. It did have a nice view of the monastery from up there, she had to admit. The night sky looked beautiful. The brief feeling of growing heat at the back of her neck was the only warning Byleth got before she ducked, drawing her sword and whirling around as a fireball went sailing over her head. TCH. I wonder, was that your power, Felstar, or do you truly have that good of instincts? Byleth blinked, a frown coming to her face as she studied the blonde woman in front of her, who looked like an average priestess of the monastery. Felstar. You, abomination. That is the name of the false god that descended from the heavens and stole the land from its rightful rulers, the woman explained with a small smirk, her tone calm and even. I presume you know none of that truth then? You are a vessel, after all. Merely the echo of the false god. Byleth narrowed her eyes. You're one of those people then. The Agarthans. Ah, excellent. You're not a complete idiot. The woman giggled, before placing a hand on her chest and bowing with a flourish. Hello, Professor Byleth Eisner, daughter of Geralt the Blade Breaker. For the past, however many months, I have been known as Selene, a priestess of the Church of Ceros. My true name though. She giggled again, then straightened as darkness and flames erupted from her body. The guise of the priestess she wore burned away until Byleth was faced with a woman with pale white skin and pitch black hair. Her robes transformed, twisting from white fabric into a black and scarlet shoulderless gown decorated with rubies, chains, and feathers. Her black painted lips curled into a smile as her crimson eyes glittered with delighted malice. Is Bias, seeker of vengeance. You want revenge against me then? Byleth nodded while she considered the distance between herself and the mage. She could maybe strike her with the sword of the Creator, there wasn't that much space between them. For Pitacus. Aha, so you do know what I want, Bias said, no amusement in her words despite her smile. I heard from Shay that you want revenge for her. Though I don't know what that has to do with me. Of course you don't. I would be surprised if you did, I mean, you didn't even know Thales was there, so how could you have known my sister was in the carriage with him? Ha 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 ha. She began to laugh, unnerving Byleth. She sounded genuinely unhinged, and then the laughter cut off entirely. But then that doesn't really matter, no, not really. Because you still killed her, and I've been putting this off for so very long, trying to make sure I had everything lined up to make this work, it's been maddening, you know? Knowing you were here with your happy little family. Your papa, and your sister. She laughed again, bitter and angry. It seems some people really are favored over others, Though you're not really a person, are you? Just an empty shell with a god contained inside. I wonder, is the intelligence you have even your own, or are you just an amnesiac deity aping the actions of a human? You are heartless, after all, so the topic warrants speculation. Really, the scientist in me would love to see what the reality of Byleth Eisner is, but I absolutely hate you and want you dead, so that curiosity can be damned for all I care. Byleth took a breath, keeping her sword at the ready. She knew this woman's motivations and that she was a threat to not only her, but likely her entire family. She wasn't about to allow that. Even if her grip wavered as she stared at the mage, stricken with grief over her sister's death. A god. Suthes murmured, meanwhile, her brow furrowed in thought and concern. Could it be? Is that all you had to say? Byleth asked, steady and ready to fight. Oh, no, thank you for reminding me. Bias snapped her fingers with a grin and Byleth felt herself stiffen as she saw Emily appear in front of her, her arms bound tight and a gag in her mouth. You know, I really should thank that archbishop of yours. Or perhaps her chamberlain. Whichever one made all those faith magic books so readily available in their library. Speaking of. She clenched her fist and there was a flash of red magic as Byleth felt a strange, tight sensation settle over her. The professor frowned deeper, then glanced at her hand as she tried to form a fireball. Nothing happened. She couldn't call on her magic. And I believe that leaves one more thing, Bias said, smirking once more as she placed a hand on Emily's shoulder, earning a flinch from the restrained girl, whose eyes flicked towards the mad mage in obvious fear. A warranted fear, given Bias moved her other hand towards Emily's face and set her palm alight with magical fire. Toss your sword off the tower, or your student dies. Let Emily go afterward, Byleth demanded. What? Suthes screeched, snapped from her consideration as she stared at Byleth in shock. You cannot be serious. That is your only weapon. You cannot just throw it away, and especially not for her. You know that girl is an imposter. Throw the sword away first then, Bias responded, her tone mocking, if you care at all for this girl, it shouldn't even be a choice. It wasn't. Byleth tossed the sword of the Creator out of the tower. The flames on Bias's hand winked out as she laughed aloud, eyes wide with disbelief. Ha ha ha. Are you serious? You didn't even hesitate. And for this trash? Oh, or did you? Did you, perhaps, test things, Maybe you struck out and saw that it wouldn't work, so you turned back time to pretend you wouldn't sacrifice your student's life for your own sake. Byleth showed no reaction to the knowledge that Bias knew about her powers. She just held out her now empty hand. I upheld my end of the bargain. Let my student go. You didn't. Bias blinked, her confusion obvious, before she scowled and shoved Emily forward. Fine, take the trash. I'll give you a moment to console her as a favor to your kindness before I boil your brain inside your skull. Byleth caught her student and, despite the situation, she smiled at Emily. It's okay. I've got you. The sound of a knife piercing into flesh echoed through the tower. The barely tied ropes fell away from Emily's body as she glared up at her wide-eyed professor. Just fall down and die. Byleth just stared for a moment at her student, and at the blood dripping down from the black dagger in her hand, before she fell back to the ground with a faint thud, blood staining the front of her uniform. There, I did it, Emily said, turning back toward Bias with a scowl, one hand clenched tight around the dagger in it. So you did. Not quite as satisfying as I thought it would be. Bias sighed. I guess it just goes to show what they say about vengeance. I don't remember what they say about vengeance, it's probably something pithy about it being bad. Well. Do I get to go now? Emily asked. I don't, I just want to go home, Bias. Home? Now where would that be again? Would you stop screwing around? You said we could just warp out of here once I killed her, and I did. She's dead, let's go. It's a legitimate question, Kronia. After all, you're the one cozying up to the beasts. Trying to find a new home for yourself, It's understandable, given no one wants you or would even care if you died. Really, our people would probably celebrate, given how you murdered Solon. Kronia swallowed, trying to ignore the pit of despair growing in her belly at the sage's outright gleeful lie. You promised. Ugh, you sound like a child when you whine like that. But then again, you were always a brat. At least you turned out to be useful at the end. She grinned, raising a hand as fiery orange sigils began to light up all around the interior of the tower. Now be a good little scapegoat and accept your sacrifice with dignity. Kronia flinched back, instinctively trying to get away as she looked for a route out, and then she felt a pair of strong arms wrap around her as Byleth put herself between Kronia and the explosion, the force of the blast sending them both right over the edge of the tower as the entire top erupted in a massive fireball. Kronia's eyes were wide with disbelief as she fell, the sheer impossibility of the situation keeping her from reacting for a second before her mind started working rapidly, trying to think of how she could survive the fall. Her guise burned away, her identity of Emily Korsh vanishing as she returned to her true flesh for the first time in almost a year. She had no time to enjoy the sensation though as her tails shot out, stabbing into the stone of the tower as she tried her damnedest to slow their descent. It was difficult, near impossible, and she could feel a pain in her spine at the sensation, but she held firm until they finally slowed to a stop on the ground. Th that bitch, Kronia growled, tense and pained from the brutal descent, though her superior's treachery stung almost as badly. She knew Bias had lost it, that she was a vicious bitch that couldn't be trusted, but it still hurt. She shook her head, then looked at the woman who tried to save her, who had burns all across her back and was breathing heavily in her grasp. Why did you do that? Byleth tried to steady her breath, her back still stinging from the explosion, before giving the girl who wasn't Emily as good of a smile as she could manage. You're my student, Emily. I protect my students. Kronia swallowed. An Agarthan couldn't cry, they had no need for tears. But the cold, black heart in her chest tightened painfully at her professor's declaration. It's Kronia. Reaching into her pocket, Byleth pulled out a red handkerchief, before grabbing Kronia's hand. With a gentle pull, she managed to get the Agarthan to open her tightly clenched fist, revealing the wound on her hand where Kronia had stabbed herself instead of stabbing Byleth, which she bandaged up with the handkerchief. Sorry, my magic is still sealed. Byleth apologized, her breathing getting heavier. You need to get out of here, she continued, hearing more explosions erupting around the monastery as screams and roars rang out. They're not going to let you go. I know I won't, a cold voice said, before a spear of fire pierced through Kronia, making her scream in pain as she was consumed in flames. I upheld my end of the bargain. Let my student go, Byleth repeated, trying to match the same cadence she spoke in earlier. You didn't. Bias blinked, her confusion obvious, before she scowled and shoved Emily forward. Fine, take the trash. I'll give you a moment to console her as a favor to your kindness before I boil your brain inside your skull. Bracing herself, Byleth caught the disguised Agarthan. Don't worry, I have this handled, she said, before grabbing her hand before Kronia could stab her, moving to twist the knife out of her grip and toss it. A blaze of fire cut her off. Bias did not hesitate for a moment when she saw Byleth making a move. This time, when the tower erupted in fire, they didn't have a chance to get out, and Bias gladly burned with them. Byleth ducked beneath the fireball that went over her head and swung out without hesitation, sending the sword of the Creator straight at Bias and catching her. Byleth stumbled at the bottom of the goddess tower, letting out a breath as she felt the phantom sensation of her own body burning. This Bias woman certainly didn't hesitate. Taking in a small breath, she tried to figure out what to do. She still had 2 more charges, but she would rather not cut it close. Okay, Bias was planning on ambushing her on the tower, so she just had to make sure to face her somewhere else. Maybe she should find some backup? There were people on patrol so she could find help easily enough. Looking around, she tried to make it seem as if she remembered something, before walking away from the tower. They're behind us. That Bias woman can barely hide the scowl on her face, Suthis said, staring behind Byleth. Well, that's a start. I just need to find a good enough place to confront them, Byleth murmured, getting on the bridge only for her eyes to widen as she ducked, barely dodging a fireball. Don't think you'll be getting to safety that easily, Felstar, Bias called out, one arm outstretched while another wrapped around Emmy, Kronia's neck, holding her hostage. What do you want? Byleth asked, playing along for now. You dead and that sword gone, Bias stated, not doing away with her disguise this time. And if you don't, your precious student is going to pay the price. But you already knew that, didn't you? How did you figure out how the Divine Pulse works? Why would I ever tell you? You can talk to me all you want, but it doesn't matter, does it? Nothing matters until you're dead. What does reality matter when some abomination can just alter it at her own will, huh? Byleth grimaced. That's not how it works. Isn't it? If the world doesn't turn in the right way, you turn it back. That kind of power really is monstrous. Though, with it, I have to ask, why would you keep trying to save Kronia here, she wondered, glancing at the younger Agarthan. You should know she's not one of you, and you should know that she, like all of our people, will strike you down the instant she gets the opportunity. Her eyes drifted back up towards Byleth, a strange intensity growing in them. Unless she didn't. Unless this little bitch really is a traitor. Her hand lit aflame as her grip around Kronia's throat tightened. I wouldn't. Be Bias, I'm, GRK, I am loyal. Let her go, Byleth ordered, her grip tightening on the sword of the Creator. No. I won't. Bias, wearing the face of the priestess Selene, smiled. It was a wide, unpleasant smile that showed her teeth. You underestimate my resolve, Felstar. I would gladly burn myself if it saw you dead in the attempt. Of course I would kill this degenerate failure if it meant ending you. In fact, I want to know something. Do you have a limit to your power? Why would you ask that? You won't remember if I do turn things back. Personal satisfaction, including the fact that it means, if I'm right, then this is guaranteed to make you waste a chance. And in a sudden burst of flames, both Bias and Kronia were engulfed in a massive conflagration, the mad sage laughing loud while Byleth's student screamed in pain. The world went still, distorted, and Byleth couldn't grit her teeth or clench her fists in the paused time she dwelled in before she could turn things backwards. Then she could, because she suddenly found herself in the Suthis' throne room. Well, this is aggravating, Suthis complained with a frown, lounging on her throne with an aggravated frown. To think, one of those foul sorcerers could figure out our powers, much less plan around them, though I suppose her willingness to destroy herself is certainly a contributing factor. Turning back to right before I go up isn't working, Byleth muttered. I need to go further back, maybe see if I can get someone to help me. She was waiting for you in the goddess tower. Perhaps if you were to bring someone with you? Or have someone sneak up on her while you confront her? How did she get a hold of Kronia? Byleth wondered, frowning. If I knew when she took her hostage, she was at the ball, right? Yes, she likely grabbed her there. If Kronia didn't go to her, that is. Bias might be planning to betray her, but Kronia is unaware of that. Much like how she isn't aware of your ability to turn back time, it seems. So, we should go talk dash. No, there is no telling how she might react if you tell her that you're aware of that plan, especially in a crowded location like the ball. Right. She knew Kronia was willing to let her live, but there was no saying how she might react if she was surprised like that. I should talk with Edelgard. She knows that Emily is likely the infiltrator, and if I don't go up to the tower, she and Dorothea might get caught in the trap instead. I see. Well, I will say that Edelgard plainly favors you, so I believe you have a good chance of convincing her to aid you. The question is, when should you ask her for aid? When? At the ball, right? I know where Kronia and Bias should be, I think. If Edelgard could help me, Edelgard wanted to meet me to begin with. She's who I need to talk to. Are you certain of that? What of the knights? Or your father? Or perhaps Shay? Byleth paused. Damn it, I should have tried. No, do not start thinking of what you should have done, think about what you will do. What happens if you inform the Knights of Syros instead? They try to go after Bias, she probably kills them and blows up the tower, then comes after me and my family, she would try to kill Geralt and Shay too. No, she hates me, she would go for them first if I tried to bring them along, you heard her earlier. She probably resents that I still have my sister and father, even though she killed her own father figure. Byleth felt her frown deepen. And if I tell Shay, I don't know how she'd react to Emily being an infiltrator. She might get reckless and Bias could easily take advantage of that. So your best bet is Edelgard. Do you think talking with her at the ball or before the ball would be best? Before. If I try during the ball we might not be able to sneak out easily, Byleth decided, doing her best to think things through, it gives us some more time to plan too. Very well then, you have a plan of attack. Go forth, and save your precious student, Suthis said, a smile on her face. Taking a deep breath as she stood in front of her mirror, Byleth didn't change into the formal uniform this time and stuck to her usual outfit instead. Once she was ready, she left her room and made a beeline towards Edelgard's. Once there, she carefully knocked on the door, trying to look as natural as possible in case Bias was watching her. Who is it? Edelgard, it's me. I had something I wanted to talk to you about. It might seem silly, but it's about the last test you had. Excuse me. A moment later the door opened and Edelgard stood there in a fancy, lordly outfit. Do you mind if I could come in? Byleth asked, stepping in once Edelgard moved to the right. And she immediately let out a breath once the door closed behind them. Emily is the infiltrator, I confirmed it. You did. I did. Her name is Kronia, but more importantly, she's working with a second, Byleth trailed off. Of course she did. Because Edelgard couldn't hide her reaction. There wasn't the surprised confusion or bemusement that might come with hearing something unexpected. She recognized Kronia's name, and there wasn't a hint of surprise when she heard the word second. You knew. Excuse me? Edelgard asked, trying to school her features. You knew Kronia was pretending to be Emily, and that Bias was the second, Byleth stated, noting the panic in Edelgard's eyes. Almost instinctively, Byleth's hand moved to her sword. Are you one too? And no. No, Professor, please, I was never. Edelgard stopped herself. She'd reached towards Byleth, trying to convince her, but she pulled her hand back and took a breath, closing her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, there was a cold determination in her gaze. Professor. I am not an Agarthan. Everything I have told you about my hatred for them was true. I never lied about that. I did, however, keep quiet when it came to other matters of importance. Such as the fact that, though I despise those who slither in the dark, I believed I could use them for my true goals of changing Fodlan. To that end, I became the Flame Emperor. You. Byleth felt dizzy. She had experienced dying today and somehow this was making her chest tense up more. I wasn't working with them at first. The bandits that chased after us at the start of the year, and the incidents with Lord Lonato and the mausoleum occurred because of me, but I had no hand in Flane's kidnapping, or what they are attempting in Ordelia at the moment, Edelgard stated, attempting to keep her steel. I also have reason to believe they had a hand in the Almiran invasion that happened recently. Byleth shook her head, trying to focus. You said Flane's kidnapping. I attempted to toss Bias off the trail, but I believe I was the one who made her interested in Shay in the first place. This entire time I trusted you, and you were working with them. You kept telling me to leave Kronia alone, is this why? Were you mocking me behind my back? No, of course not. Professor, you need to believe. Shay died, Byleth said, her mind honing in on her sister's death at Lonato's hand. What? Edelgard's eyes widened, shock evident in her eyes. Professor, what are you? Did you know about the Divine Pulse too? How much did Bias tell you? Byleth demanded to know, her mind swirling with memories. Her chest clenched as she tried to focus, unable to hear Edelgard. She felt a hand touch her shoulder, and she couldn't stop her reaction. Grabbing her wrist, Byleth pinned Edelgard against the bed, placing her dagger against the princess' throat. Byleth felt tense, as neither of them made a sound. The heavy silence was only broken as Edelgard let out a small breath and closed her eyes. A small bead of blood swelled up from where the mercenary's dagger was placed. The memory of Edelgard and Kronia being cut down by the Death Knight flashed in her mind, and Byleth couldn't help her panic as she reared back, tossing her dagger into the floor. How much of it was real? Are we actually friends? Byleth asked, feeling tears stinging her eyes. I mean what I'm about to say. You are one of my most cherished friends, Byleth, Edelgard said, staring up at her professor. I had intended on confessing to you at the Goddess Tower, yet it seems things have fallen out of my control. Yeah. Byleth looked down at Edelgard, and felt her chest tense as she saw the trail of blood on her neck. Reaching down, she healed the princess. Sorry. It's okay. I was prepared for worse, Edelgard stated as Byleth moved off her. What did you mean Shay died? I just saw her getting dragged off to get ready for the ball. She only had one charge left, she couldn't just rewind again. She had to take the risk. I have the ability to turn back time. Edelgard took a slow breath, before frowning at Byleth. My teacher, I understand you would not joke in this situation, but a part of me cannot help but feel that you are trying to one-up my secret, as it were. Byleth snorted, unable to hide a giggle. That, I swear, I'm not. I'm not Shay. Or Ferdinand. He would absolutely, you can turn back time. Byleth nodded, getting serious again. Yes, I can. I only really use it to avert disasters, and I have a limited amount of times I can use it in a day. Disasters like, Shay dying? Edelgard asked, before frowning as she remembered their first mission together. Or, Ferdinand. And others. I didn't need to with the invasion with how much you've all improved, but, yes. The first time I had to use it was back when we first met, actually. I wasn't able to fully deflect that bandit's attack. Edelgard let out a small breath, aware that if Byleth was telling the truth, then there was an alternate world where her choice to hire bandits led to her death. That was, darkly ironic. So, what disaster prompted you to come back here? I can't imagine you would come to me like this unless something terrible happened. Byleth frowned. Why wouldn't I come to you? I appreciate your help and your perspective. I meant it more in the sense, thank you for that. She tried to ignore her face starting to redden. I think you would normally be more circumspect and less harried if you had simply discovered the truth about Kronia and Bias, so clearly something went wrong. Add in the ability you just told me about, and I can't imagine things went well tonight. They were going well. Then, Byleth sighed, then began to explain the events of the night. I see, I must admit it is troubling to know that Bias knows about your ability as well, and that she's willing to kill herself and her hostage. Though I am just as surprised to hear that Kronia was trying to save you. Yeah, I guess she does care about us. Edelgard bit down the instinct to say that it was a trick. So, what is your plan? We need to keep track of Bias and Kronia. Heading to the Goddess Tower is a bad idea as well, we should try to lead them elsewhere, Byleth said, trying to keep a clear head. Bias is extremely skilled with fire magic and won't hesitate to kill herself if it means succeeding in her goals. So we need to make sure to catch her off guard. Yeah, Hey, does Dorothea know about you? No? Why do you ask? Oh, well, you wanted to meet me up at the Goddess Tower and I got a letter from Dorothea saying she wanted to meet up there with you as well. So I thought maybe you had told her, with how close you two are. I was unaware that she wanted to meet us both up there, Edelgard said, idly wondering if Hubert had entered her room and tossed out an unmarked letter. Oh, so I guess you two aren't planning to elope, Byleth muttered, getting Edelgard to pause for a moment as she tried to register those words. Professor, no. I would not leave the monastery and abdicate my position just to elope. Well, I didn't expect you to abdicate. I think it still counts as eloping if you leave the monastery to marry her in Adrestia, Byleth pointed out. I still have no intention of doing that. Oh. Are you sure? Professor, is this really a priority right now? I just want to make sure everything is okay with you two, Byleth said with a small frown on her face. I mean, you two won't be seeing each other for some time. And if nothing else, it's important that you two are happy. Well, I appreciate your concern, but we really should focus on what to do next, Professor. If Bias is planning to make a move tonight, then we need to work to prevent it ahead of time. That's true. Well, the main thing to keep in mind is that she knows about the Divine Pulse. So we need to act as if nothing is out of the ordinary. If she gets any inkling that I turned back time, then she'll strike, Byleth considered, trying to come up with a plan. So we need to go about our day, which means getting ready for the ball. We also need to keep an eye on Kronia, since she's the important part to this. As long as we can keep her separate from Bias, then I can take Bias out easily. I could probably also wait a bit before heading to the tower so soon after the ball starts. Professor, exactly how early did you go to the tower? Oh, about an hour after the ball started. Why did you go so early? Well, you said you had something important to talk about, so I wanted to make sure I was ready. That, Professor, I meant later in the night. You know, slipping away while the festivities were at a high point. Oh, well, I guess I don't need to go that early then, Byleth allowed, looking mildly embarrassed. Though I guess I already know what you wanted to talk about. What do you think Dorothea wanted to talk about? What indeed, Edelgard murmured, her face warming a little as she considered what the songstress may have been intending. Presumably, she knew the legends about the tower too, so if she wanted both of them there. Well, we can ask her later, when things are settled. Well, hopefully it's not as big of a reveal as what you told me. Do you wish to talk about me being the Flame Emperor? We can talk afterwards. I want to know what you're planning, but regardless of what happens you'll be important to me, okay Edelgard? Of course, my teacher. Now then, I should probably head back before anyone notices I've been in here for a while. I don't want any weird rumors to start about you cheating on Dorothea or anything, Byleth said, standing up as she got ready to leave. Edelgard didn't know how to respond to that, so she chose not to. Instead, she just let out a sigh. Things were going okay. The ball was still as lovely as the first time around, and this time Byleth was able to stick around long enough to dance. It was admittedly a bit rough for her since she was still new to dancing, but when Flame pulled her onto the dance floor, she was clearly looking for more fun instead of a perfect dancer. After that, it was one person after the other who wanted to dance with her, with the only break happening when Edelgard announced she would be leaving to be the Emperor. Even Catherine wanted a turn, though said turn ended up being very short since Shay cut in, the mercenary spinning her sister around with surprising ease given the dress she was in. You know, it's a shame you didn't get dressed up too, her sister said, grinning cheerfully in all her finery. I suppose, though, who knows? Maybe next time we have a gala, I'll be in a similar dress, Byleth remarked, still amused by her sister's outfit. Oh, I'm sure everyone would have fun dressing you up. Though, I doubt I can get Claude to pay for you. Maybe you can get Edelgard to pay for your dress and makeup. I'll ask. With a light chuckle, Byleth continued to dance with Shay, up until someone tapped Shay's shoulder. "Mind if we cut in?" Dorothea asked with Edelgard standing by her side. "Oh, sure." And Shay casually handed Byleth off to Dorothea with a cheeky grin. "Good luck you two. May the best dance partner win." Byleth blinked. Shay, it's not a competition. But her sister had already headed off to find the next person to dance with, leaving her with Edelgard and Dorothea, who grinned. "Heh, I'll try not to show off too much then. This really isn't a competition," Edelgard muttered, before pausing as Dorothea grabbed her and Byleth's hand so the three could dance together. "Aw come on Edie, what's a bit of friendly competition?" Dorothea asked, a smile on her face. "Besides, I'm sure the professor here is enjoying being able to dance with her favorite students, isn't that right?" "A professor shouldn't play favorites," Byleth said, getting Dorothea to pout. "Though it is nice being with you too." "It most certainly is." Dorothea, could I speak with the professor for a moment?" Edelgard requested, earning a big grin from the songstress. Oh. Looking for a little private conversation, are we? Well, I suppose I can leave you two be for a moment, though I expect to hear about any big decisions, all right?" "Why yes, of course, I will make sure to inform you." That brought a smile to Dorothea's face before she let go of the pair and moved over to join the rest of her friends, leaving Edelgard and Byleth to have a moment to themselves. "Kronia is still in the gala. I've been having Hubert keep an eye on her, and it seems that she is likely waiting for you to leave before she goes to Bias," Edelgard said in a low voice as the two danced together. "Okay, that's good. Did anything else happen?" Well, I had an interesting conversation with Dimitri," she murmured, before shaking her head. "More importantly, are you sure we shouldn't try to go after Bias yet? Or maybe try something else?" "No. I already know Bias trapped the tower with magic, somehow, and if she gets any indication that I know what she's planning, then she'll lash out. Our best bet is to attempt to leave soon and head to the courtyard. It's a wide open place and we can find cover easily should she attack us," Byleth decided, moving in sync with the Emperor. "I see. Well, in that case, we need to figure out a way for Dorothea to stay behind. I'd rather not drag her into this." "Yeah, if it's just the two of us, I have a better chance of making sure we make it out okay," Byleth responded, before glancing at the songstress who was smiling at the two. "We could ask her to wait here. I'm sure she'll be understanding." "Perhaps, though I will say, I must admit it is a shame we likely won't be able to climb the Goddess Tower tonight. It's an important place to my parents, and I was hoping to gain something similar by going there." "What happened there?" "It's where my father met my mother." "From what he said, it was love at first sight," Edelgard said, a small blush on her face. "Perhaps if we have the time, we can meet there before I have to leave." "Maybe?" "That sounds like it would be nice," Byleth replied, smiling, before a thought occurred. "Oh, I wonder if Dorothea knows about that." Manuela said the whole legend about the tower referred to a man and a woman, but maybe Dorothea was going to try confessing there anyway? Heh, that would cute. And in an instant, Byleth's smile dropped, because she spotted a very familiar priestess walk into the room. In a second, it occurred to her that she didn't actually have a guarantee that Bias would have stayed in one location just because that was what she did previously. Not when things had already changed. She should have made her move before the ball. She shouldn't. In the next second, Bias spotted her. And the moment she recognized the horrified look on Byleth's face, a large, manic grin spread across her own. "Professor? What's wrong?" Edelgard began to ask before there was a burst of heat and both the sound of screams and the smell of burning flesh began to fill the room as Bias simply grabbed the nearest student by the throat and burned them alive. "No!" Byleth screamed, pushing Edelgard behind her as she drew her sword and swung at the manic Agarthan, who spread her arms wide as though happily accepting the blade about to carve through her chest. But before it did, she cast one more spell, and that entire half of the room exploded in fire. As she felt her flesh begin to burn amid the screams of her students, Byleth forced herself back, further than she'd ever gone before. Sitting up in her bed, Byleth grit her teeth, before slamming her fist into the wall. Ignoring the stinging pain in her hand, the professor quickly got dressed and rushed out of her room. She couldn't hesitate, she needed to make sure Bias couldn't hurt anyone else. She knocked on Edelgard's door, practically pounding her fist against the wood. "Edelgard, can you open up?" She heard movement inside, and luckily, her student heard her too. "Professor? What's wrong?" She didn't answer, just waiting for a moment before she shoved her way in once the door was opened, ignoring Edelgard's exclamation. "We need to talk." "I know who the infiltrators are," Byleth said, panting from the running she had just done. "And, I know your secret. Check the description for the links to the author."